Ahlers joins us here in the Pirate Radio studios. Holt, welcome in. How you doing, man?
Appreciate it, Clip, man. Excited to be here.
His Red Hot Knicks are playing well. That was his lock of the week last week.
Them?
Oh, of course.
They win every game. Yeah. Why wouldn't you at this point?
You can't stop now.
And another great show today, Holton, and great guest. This was one that y'all teased. So who are the answers when you put it out on Twitter? You kind of gave some parameters, some clues. What names did you see?
We saw Gerard, which we're working on. We'll get him on soon. First of all, our next two guests are pretty sick too. We're going to start teasing those here soon. But we got Gerard. No one picked Ruff because we kept saying player. We never said coach.
You said a player that played for a legendary coach.
Yes.
And everybody was going, who is that? Steve Logan they're talking about? So, yeah, it was a good clue. Yeah, it was a great clue.
And Caden wanted me to be like, he's a coach. I'm like, well, obviously a player coach is Ruff. Yeah. So kept going with that. And then someone, literally an hour before we tweeted out like who it was, someone finally commented Ruff. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's release it. So it was pretty cool, though. We're having fun with it.
I was told by Jonathan Ellerby to ask about a lunch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So can you explain that? I don't.
You didn't watch the show, I guess, man.
I watched some of it with Mark Alexander today, but I had to do some other things.
Understandable. Yeah, so in the episode, I go into detail about a week before commitment day. I said signing day on the show. I meant commitment day. Big time ECU donor, probably top 3 at the time, really well known guy. Asked to go to lunch with me and my dad. And look, I've been to donor lunches before with some ACC schools, so I knew what that meant, or I thought I knew what it meant. And so I go to lunch with him, and pretty much you're gonna have to watch the show to figure out what he said to me, but he pretty much, you're gonna have to go to the show and watch. It wasn't what I thought it was gonna be.
Okay.
It was crazier than I ever imagined it being.
I did not hear that part either.
Yeah, it was right after the Ruff interview. I talked about how bad the program was in shambles, and that was kind of part of it. So
now I kind of want to quit this show. Hey, nobody go to that show until after this one.
I already wanted to watch the show after work, and now I definitely want to watch the show.
You got to.
I did listen to most, if not all, of the Ruff interview, and want to play a couple of clips, Holt, including, and they're both questions from Caden Norman, ironically. Yeah. But it kind of would have been an awkward question for you to ask, I guess. It was, what about a 9th-year-old Holton Ahlers did Ruffin McNeill see when he was coaching here at East Carolina? Hit cut number 1, Shirley.
What made you go out there and feel confident in offering Holton Ahlers as a 9th grader?
I knew him before then. When he was playing like Little League baseball, that was his deal. And, everybody think football, he was really good at that. But I remember that. And then his dad and I, Morgan, we've had a relationship for a long, long time. The first time you meet him, number one, as a person, you want him on your team, period. Then as a quarterback leading the team, period. And then, you knew he was going to do everything every day to get better. How did I know that? I've just been doing it so long and watching young men so long, you could see he was going to be easy to coach and easy to lead, and it was proof. And his legacy's there forever there at East Carolina.
Hold some awesome words from Coach Ruff. First of all, when you hear Coach Ruff's voice, it just makes you smile.
It does.
When you know you got a great dude right there. But yeah, from what I know about you, you've always seemed like a mature kid. But for him to kind of pick up on that early on, I'm sure y'all hit it off. And he says those things about you. You could ask all the players that played for him, what made you want to play for a guy, commit to a guy like Ruffin McNeill. So you can answer that half of it. How about that part of the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could have played for him. I mean, he's an ECU legend, and I mean, I was ready to commit the day he offered me, and I told the story about how he offered me and got kind of into detail of that on the show. But I mean, yeah, he's a great guy, and like you said, I mean, ask any person who's ever had an interaction with him. They have a rough story, and that's how you know you have a good person. He could have really just summed up all that by just saying local politics. The rest of it would have been taken care of.
Well, Morgan was the PA announcer, and it was in my contract. We had to bring his kid on.
There's local politics, bud.
Luckily, he was halfway decent enough. We could fool everybody. Yeah, one of those things.
Do you remember the exact moment when you got offered by East Carolina in 9th grade?
Yeah.
And how you reacted?
Well, we talked about that today. Were you offered before you knew you were offered?
Yeah, I guess
it sounded like, yeah.
He, I talked about it in the show, and he was like, you got an offer from us, right? And I was like, No, sir, I did not know.
News to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it goes into Chandler. You should listen to the whole.
I
Naylor
do
show.
need to listen to that show.
Every Thursday at noon comes out.
Yeah, no, I usually catch up on it at 6 o'clock, which you can tonight on Pirate Radio.
Good plug.
There we go.
Good save there, man. And then the question of the day. This one's been out on social media, but what would it take, or would Coach Ruff ever come back to East Carolina in a capacity? We've got the question and the answer. This is number 2, Shirley.
Would you consider ever, if you were offered a homecoming back to ECU in the development role, or kind of the role you kind of have at State today, would you ever consider that potentially?
That's a tough question. One of my roles I've always enjoyed, the head coaching role, put me out of a little bit. I love being in the background, and I love being able to help and aid. I never want to be in someone's way or be a distraction from the person in charge of his chance to grasp and galvanize not just the team, but the community and the fans. And that will be the biggest thing right now is that, being in the way of a coach and his way of galvanizing the team. But I like right now, like I've turned down a lot of speaking engagements. I've turned down some head jobs. I just want to be in the background. Well, my dad was not doing well either, but just want to be in the background. I think it's, it's a great question, but I hope I spoke what I sort of look for. I would never want to interfere with another coach's chance to bring his spirit and philosophy and his way of doing things, and it might interfere with that.
It's a very valid question, obviously. It's a tough one to answer. Could you imagine an ECU coach that was at State being asked that question, and how Pirate fans would listen to that answer and say, what's he going to say? Does he want to go back to State? Does he not like So it's tough for him to answer, and he kind of went around it. I think his point is well taken, though. If he does return, he has such a name, such a legacy here, that he doesn't want to take away from what's going on day in, day out with the program. So what I'm saying is I think he answered it about the best way he could.
He did. And look, I mean, we've said it the whole time, it's the People Show, and we're going to ask the tough questions. Yeah. I asked, was he expecting the firing in 2015? Like, I just straight up asked him, and he had a good answer there too. But yeah, I mean, we're going to have to ask the questions. Sometimes you got to be political, and our show isn't going to be political at all, even though it's local politics. But that's more of a joke than anything. But I mean, I thought he answered it really well, and it does make sense that he doesn't want to overshadow anyone.
Steve asking about the infamous "it's local politics, bud." Does that guy know he's a legend now? Who said it? So Holton's got the APB out on him.
Yeah, at the end of the show, we called him out again, asking if anyone knows who he is. He's an anonymous right now under an alias name, so we're still finding him. Yeah,
we are searching for that man who I believe called in with a couple of different names. He was he Larry? Because then he called in as like Gary in Texas the following week, I want to say. So he's all over the map. We do not know.
I was waiting for him to call in and say he was Mary too, but I don't.
And do a woman's voice.
Just waiting for it, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah. So we're definitely looking for that guy. Holton Ahlers Show, episode 4, available now where you get your podcast, and on Pirate Radio at 6, and of course Pirate Radio TV. And I talked to Caden Norman yesterday. He said things are going well from his perspective. Speaking of the walk-ons. I remember Jack saying this, but like he and Drew and Caden never played for Ruff.
No,
either.
Didn't play for.
But I remember you point out like Jack and Drew are not as familiar with Ruffin McNeill as you and even Caden are, and the way Jack was like, hearing a guy say I love you and you saying I love you back, he was like, that's a special bond between a coach player there, especially a guy you didn't even play for.
Yeah. It's crazy, and that's the type of person Ruff is.
No doubt. He is very lovable. Ruffin McNeill, even in the red, which he didn't wear red. I asked Caden that yesterday. I said, when the show pops up, what's he gonna be wearing? Yeah. Said he went with a neutral black.
He did.
I
asked Drew to get because we can't see the screen. We're working on it here. We're obviously building the studio here, and we're going to have TVs in there where we can see the screen. But only Drew can see the screen. I told him beforehand, I was like, dude, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Because I opened the show with that. I was like, you can't like coaching in that red. But if he was wearing it, I was going to say you can't like wearing the red.
And I thought it was a real moment seeing an older gentleman like Ruffin McNeill struggle with technology at the beginning.
It was hilarious. We thought about editing it out, and I was like, dude, I can't do it.
He was like, I'm an OG Holt. I can't handle all this technology. But it got going. It was a great interview, great show. And you can check that out right now. Holt, Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. When you put it that way, it sounds like a mismatch. But how about Purdy? And I still don't know if I want to put him in that category or if he's just a system guy. But the way he ran the ball last week,
he played really good, man.
He,
Jack will give you all the updates on how he's the best quarterback in the league. I'm not going to say that, but he played really well. And look, he's in the Super Bowl. Quarterbacks don't get to the Super Bowl. First episode, I went on a limb and said the Browns were going to make the Super Bowl and Flacco was going to lead them, and random quarterbacks make it. Purdy's not a random quarterback that made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, he's played really well. You don't go from almost undrafted to Super Bowl quarterback in 2 years unless you're a stud. Obviously, the coaching is very well around him. Yeah. He's been coached really well. He has a lot of good pieces, but he's there for a reason. Now, if you compare him to Mahomes, obviously that's two totally different things, but he's there for a reason. And Big Dog earlier this week, I'll give him some credit on this. We were talking about MVPs for the Chiefs. He said Steve Spagnuolo, Chris Jones, that defense. Because even when they had their lulls this year, the defense always showed up. They've showed up in these playoffs. Didn't allow anything to Lamar and the Ravens after that first drive of the game, really. So that's the matchup for the Super Bowl. You'll get into it more next week, I'm sure, but any early thoughts? Yeah, I think you got to go with the best quarterback, and I think Mahomes has shown that he's the guy. He's won Super Bowls before. You're talking about Chris Jones and stuff. Kind of a cool story is when I was in Seattle, I was talking to Drew and Gino about just who was the most disruptive player that that maybe doesn't get enough credit, and they both said Chris Jones was. They said he was huge. He's really good with his hands, and obviously, disrupts the game more than anyone else. They said he did almost more than Aaron Donald just because he's bigger. So you got to put more people on.
He is a disruptor, no doubt about that. Seeing Jim Harbaugh, you got to get used to that. No longer wearing the Michigan, no longer wearing like a hoodie or a sweatshirt. He's in a nice suit
He's
today.
Official right now.
So he is being introduced. Saw Dave Canales introduced earlier today. Chon, did you get a chance to watch that?
A little bit. It went long because they introduced Dave Canales and Dan Morgan. So, I watched a little bit of it, and I'll watch the rest along with the Holton Ahlers show.
There we go.
Holt had some good things to say about Canales. Basically, the information you got from Gino and Drew Lock.
Yeah. Look at his quarter. He makes quarterbacks successful. So
he helped revive Gino's career.
Yeah, and Baker.
And then when he left, Gino didn't have the best year. So
I'm telling you, from what Gino and Drew told me was like in preseason camp, Drew especially was like, look, because there was a little bit of time when Gino and our new quarterback coach Greg Olson, not the tight end from the Panthers, but quarterback coach Greg Olson, they were bumping heads a little bit early in camp. And Drew was like, dude, it's because Canales used to be like a stud. Like he's going to be a head coach one day, and like he's the reason that we played so well. And look, if you're a Panthers fan, you got to start with a quarterback you drafted 1-1 overall. He's a quarterback guru. He showed to make quarterbacks better, so I like it.
How about the latest hirings? A bit different than what we saw early in the cycle with a bunch of young offensive guys. A couple of a young defensive guy and an old defensive guy. Mike McDonald to the Seahawks, and then Dan Quinn to my Commanders. Any thoughts on those hires, Holt?
I like Dan Quinn to the Commanders, and I really like Mike McDonald to the Seahawks too. If you get a good defensive guy who's a stud and kind of rejuvenated a defense, I think those are two markets that need good defenses, obviously, and I support it. I like it.
I saw some quotes from McDonald, and to me it just sounded like Pete Carroll had gone back. It was like, we're going to have fun. We're going to fly around. We're going to be young and exciting. And I was like, this is Pete Carroll all over again.
Pete Carroll's the younger version of Pete Carroll.
So good to have that same mindset, I guess. But I don't know. What do you think about the Seahawks without Pete Carroll? Can they keep up the good play they've had during that Carroll era?
Man, I think so. I think they got the right guy, honestly, a young defensive-minded coach, because obviously Pete's a defensive-minded coach. And then the NFL, a lot of teams and organizations, they just need a good personality at the helm. Like the coordinators do a lot more than in the NFL. The head coaches just make decisions on timeouts and I mean the little thing, game management. But as long as he puts good coordinators around him, and he might be calling the defense, I don't know since he's so young. But I like the hire.
On that note, it's got to be a dream for these guys to be a head coach one day, but Ben Johnson stays in a very dynamic offense with the Lions, with all those weapons. Yep. And then Slowick with the Houston has the love going to work with C.J. Stroud every day. They decide to take their names out of hats and stay where they are. Maybe it's a new trend. Maybe it's just two separate situations here, but found that interesting that they're going back to their good offenses.
I did too. I saw Ben Johnson. He was talking to one of the receivers. And he was like, I just love it here. We got unfinished business, and they do got such a good team, and they got so far, and like people expected them to be good, but I don't think people expected them to be a couple plays away from the Super Bowl like they were. So I'd be excited if I was him. I mean, they got a lot of weapons on offense. They got a good quarterback, so why not come back? And look, those head coaching jobs, there's going to be new ones next year as long as they play good.
There's always a new cycle opening up. When I think, and you're talking about the quarterback coordinator relationship, I always think back to Jason Campbell, former Washington quarterback, who was very talented at Auburn, came out, had a big arm, bit of a slow delivery, but I think he could have been a good quarterback, but he had like 6 different coordinators in 5 seasons. Yeah. And like, maybe if you're the best of the best, it'll work out for you, but that's just a recipe for disaster, right?
Is. Yeah, I mean, as a quarterback, I couldn't imagine every year learning a new offense. I mean, you could be good in one offense and suck in the next. Like, that's just football. I mean, each playing style doesn't fit every offense, so I couldn't imagine having that many because you're gonna be inconsistent.
You just had to get used to a new center every year, right? Wasn't that your thing?
New center every game, pretty much, for a few times until Avery Jones got here. John Spells, he was really good when Peyton Winstead got hurt. I had some good ones.
They were good and had terrible luck.
Yeah, and just got hurt, man. And then Avery Jones finally came in, stuck, and then obviously he went to Auburn. But yeah, I had 2 OCs here, so I kind of lucked up.
Luke says, cool story about Ruff. My sophomore year of high school, we had a class project. Each student had to reach out to people in the sports community and write them a letter to see if they would come speak to the class. People were writing to all kinds of people. Only a few people in the class got responses. Sure enough, Ruff responded with an autograph. What a guy.
Oh,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, it sounds right.
It sounds par for the course with Ruffin McNeill. All right, Holt, anything else? You got a Knicks play tonight? You got a pick of the night?
I'm not picking the Knicks. I got 2 plays. I got Carolina beating Duke Saturday, and I got Memphis covering the spread versus Wichita State on Saturday as well. But I'm not taking the Knicks right now. It's like playing roulette when they're hot. Eventually, they're gonna lose a game. And look, I don't think they're gonna lose a game, but I'm not gonna put my money on it.
And it basically sounds like this weekend you are picking bounce backs because Memphis lost yesterday.
They did.
And North Carolina lost
Memphis
Monday.
Lost their last 4 games, but I think Wichita State isn't good. I think that's why the spread's going to be close. They're at home. They're super talented. They were ranked, literally last week, they were ranked top 15 until they lost 4 in a row. And then Carolina.
What do you think the line? Where is that? That's in Chapel Hill, so Carolina will be favored.
Yeah.
But
I think it'll be 2 to 3 points. I mean, I don't think it's going to be many, especially coming off a loss. Duke has some sketch losses, but I think Carolina at home. And Carolina, before 2 nights ago's loss, or maybe last night's loss, they were playing really good. They didn't have any really bad losses, so I think they'll be ready to go.
It is. It's kind of funny. A marquee weekend. Coach Mack had sent me that text. Remember about all these top 10 versus top 10. So Carolina lost. They played Duke this weekend. Kentucky and Tennessee have lost this week.
Yep.
They play. That's a top 10 matchup. And then I think the one I'm looking forward to the most. Is Houston ready for prime time? I think they are, but they are at Kansas Saturday at 4 o'clock. That'll be a great game.
Yeah, I think Caden took that on the pod. That was one of his bets, I think. So we'll see.
Check out the Holton Ahlers Show, episode 4, available right now with Ruffin McNeill and the walk-ons. We'll see if we can get Jack Powers on the show next week for Super Bowl week and get his thoughts on his Niners taking on the Chiefs. Holt, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, boys.